It's ugly, and it looks unfinished.
Pins and rods and broken staircases and pipes coming out of the ground. And
Basic question people want to know is, what was this place?
The Sutro Baths, once San Francisco's crown jewel, acquired its fame for being the largest indoor swimming structure in the world.
It's a piece of San Francisco history that is really history.
Well, there weren't very many places to swim in San Francisco. It was very cold, and Sutro Baths was kind of a legendary place.
Catering to thousands, the Sutro Baths continue to impress the public by its extraordinary architecture and beautiful venue. The pool house expanded to offer its visitors shows, a museum, and an ice skating rink. In June of 1966, disaster struck, transforming culture into desolation. Though it had such rich history, it has faded into obscurity.
Going to the Sutro Baths from an orphanage where I was living. And I was only 6 years old, but I vividly remember damn near drowning in one of the pools of the Sutro Baths. But yeah, it's a memory you don't forget, I guess.
first memory, I remember changing my suit, and it was cold in the rooms. There was no heat. And the board, you walked on these little boards that had checkerboard, and it hurt your feet.
In the Boy Scouts, and I needed to learn to swim.
When I was 7 years old, he brought me out there and dumped me in one of the swimming pools and says, "Here you go, see if you can swim."
My first memory of going to the baths would have been about 1955 or 56, and taking the streetcar from my grandma's house out to Ocean Beach, and then walking uphill past the Cliff House and into the bath.
I used to run inside, and you go down these stairs, and you could see all the buggies and wagons and Tom Thumb's museum, and then you got down below, and they had all these mummies, Egyptian mummies, and they had this Tucker car there, and they had all these exhibits. They had plants and birds and statues, and there was so much to see.
Adolf Sutro made his way to America through Panama, arriving in San Francisco in 1850. He gained his wealth in Nevada and brought his fortune to San Francisco. Sutro was the 24th mayor of San Francisco and was very eccentric.
Adolf Sutro doesn't get the recognition today that he really should have.
He was German and Jewish in a society dominated by Protestants, basically from England. So he always was kind of a minority and probably had a chip on his shoulder to a certain extent.
He was probably a genius in his own way, and he had lots of money to back up whatever he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do it. He says, I can do anything, I can build anything, I can make anything. He says, I'm that good.
He was a sort of a Renaissance man, and he very much believed in, I guess we call it noblesse oblige, the duty of the rich to help the working class.
He gave more to San Francisco than any other mayor or any other person.
He had a scientific mind without having any formal science training. He could do engineering feats that not many other people could do. Plus he had the money and the willpower to go ahead and do it.
The architecture of the Sutro Baths was futuristic for its time. It was the largest pool house in the world. Sutro designed the baths so that seawater was used to fill them. Visitors traveled from around the globe to see this famous landmark.
It started when Sutro decided to build an artificial wave-powered aquarium as an outdoor attraction, and he constructed a circular aquarium built of stone quarried out there at the point, filled by wave action, and it drained at low tide. And he got so intrigued with this waterworks concept, he decided to build a series of outdoor swimming pools adjacent to what he called his aquarium, and it just kept growing. He kept changing his mind constantly. And after it was all finished, he sat back and got the idea of, well, the weather is so inclement out here, we better cover it with glass.
He said, anybody comes up with a design that I like, you can get $500. So along came Colley and Lemmy, contractors here in the city, submitted their drawings of a building, and Sutro loved it, gave them $500, and they started building it. By the time the building was built, it didn't look like anything that the drawings that were submitted.
Late 1894, the building was finished. Everything was done, and there was supposed to be a grand opening when the baths were finally thrown open. Everybody had been watching them be constructed. But Adolf Sutro got into a battle with the Southern Pacific Railroad, and his brother, Gustav, underwrote the construction of a steam train line. They sold out the rights to the railroad pretty soon after they began construction. They got another group to finish it.
He says, one condition, you have to leave that fare alone. You can't do anything to it. You have to leave it the way it is for the people to get out here. The deal was passed, and sure enough, they raised the fare to 10 cents. And he says, okay, if you're going to charge a dime, Southern Pacific, I'm going to build my own railroad. And he did.
It ran around the end of Land's End on a series of tracks that were constantly being washed out or swept into the sea by landslides. It was really treacherous, but it was also incredibly dramatic. You got off at the end of the line, you were literally no more than about 200 feet from the entrance to Sutro's estate.
1896 is when Sutro Baths finally opened to the public. There was Sutro Baths, 3.5 acres, a footprint. Immediately stairs went down to the first level, which was opened up into the museum that went out on the roof.
You could go over the top of the boardwalk and jump into the saltwater pool, which was a huge, big pool, and we'd swim in that. It was all salt water, and it would go up your nose and burn your eyes and all that kind of thing. And then they had a big slide in there, and on one end they had a big diving platform. And we just had a ball there, and we stayed there all day.
It was sort of like what my kids thought of Disneyland like. There was all these stuff. There were stuffed animals and mechanical things. And I mean, this was just like unreal.
Not only were the Sutro Baths a place to take your friends and family swimming, it slowly transformed to offer different attractions to its visitors. Over time, the baths were converted into an ice rink, and the pools drifted into neglect.
I always liked the museum. That was the thing with me. So I always liked going down and looking at all the artifacts, the mummies, and all. There was just so much stuff you couldn't take it all in. Plus, the place was so big, it was just unbelievable.
I got good at ice skating, so they let me be a guard on the ice, and because some of the speed skaters would make a lot of trouble, and hockey players, people like that. So I found myself working there late at night.
I used to go there on a special night of the week, a Wednesday or whatever, and we waltzed. And I met a fellow that I'd meet every time I went out there, once a week, and we would waltz. He was all I can remember, he was tall, very tall, and skated beautifully. And we did couples waltzing. And it was lovely.
All of us who would go there during the ice skating years knew that the place had once been a big swimming pool complex. And if you can imagine where the ice skating rink was located, there was a set of fire doors as an emergency exit. And if you push those fire doors open, they didn't take you outside. They led into the drained baths. And every kid I've talked to who grew up did the same thing. They'd push that fire door open, and as long as they could keep that thing open, they just, drink in the visuals inside until the security guard came and made you close it. But in front of you were all the drained swimming pools and the rusting diving boards and the old food concessions boarded up on the side and the bleachers. It was almost like frozen in time. And that was the only time we really got a scale of what the inside of Sutro Baths was like.
The Sutro Baths and its attractions catered to thousands, but the costs of maintenance became too high as erosion and leaky roofs continued to worsen. Sutro's estate sold the property to George Whitney in 1952. It only took time before Whitney fell into debt and was forced to shut it down. Shortly after it closed, a mysterious fire broke out and put a final end to the ever-famous pool house.
The plan was to demolish the empty building. They pulled all the artifacts out. Demolish it and redevelop the cove as a series of condominiums looking out over the Pacific Ocean. And the objects were removed, They had sold off a lot of the interior furnishings, and the building was being demolished when in June of 1966, what everybody calls a very convenient fire broke out. And in one horrific afternoon, the entire B.E.C.A building burned to the ground.
So we all jumped in cars and rolled out there. The fire lines were already up, and you couldn't get down the hill towards it. So we went into Sutro Park and climbed down from the top and sat on the bushes. We had a grand view of it. It was like it was being played out for us. It was like an amphitheater, and it was just a tremendous fire.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of rumors that this was not an accidental fire, and I kind of thought that.
It was painful. Yeah, it was painful enough to realize it was closing, but to see it burn down, that was spectacular. I wanted to be closer.
I remember looking toward the cliff house and I could see the smoke coming up in the air. So I rode my bike up to Sutro's, and I remember they had all the hoses running down the street, and the firemen didn't want to let us up there. But I walked up to the side by the gift shop and I watched it burn down. That day I watched it burn down. And a lot of people don't know this, but my dad arrested the kid that burnt down Sutro's in 1966. The kid was Magid Batch, and his sister set the fire at Sutro's.
According to the San Francisco Police Department, Magro Batch was at one point an employee at the baths, but let go shortly after being hired. He still remains the main suspect in the case. Although never convicted for the crime, he was seen running away from the fire and was detained by an officer. For 70 years, San Franciscans and tourists were able to experience and hold a memory of a unique landmark. Once a prominent attraction in San Francisco, the Sutro Baths will forever hold its history and continue to draw in spectators curious of what once laid on this very land.
You sit in Louis for a morning breakfast, and the people get off the buses and streetcars and get out of their cars and start walking. First thing they do is start looking down at the baths, and they're just fascinated by it, and they want to know what happened there. And a lot did happen.
It wasn't some old ruins from Rome. It was in all Sutro baths.